Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, and you know what time it is. It's 8 o'clock, and it's time for Money Truth Moments with Judy Copenbarger. Good morning, Judy. How you doing today?
I am awesome. Good morning to you, and good morning to our viewers.
It's great to be here this morning. I'm especially very excited about this show because we talked about last week that we were going to take questions from the audience, whether it was live. We have several questions that people have turned into us, and we're going to talk about that today too. But before we do, I want you to share with the folks. And first of all, congratulations on your book, Money, Truth, and Life. It's a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So congratulations on that.
We're very excited. The whole team is high-fiving, and we're really happy about that. It's been wonderful.
That's awesome. And I know we're going to touch on certain aspects of the book today too, which is also very exciting. So folks will get to know a little bit more about the book and the reason behind it and some of the resources that are available for them too. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. What do you say?
I'm ready. I want to hear those questions.
All right. So one of the questions that was asked last week was by a viewer, and we said we were going to tackle that, and I promised that we were going to do his first. He asked, what does Judy recommend a person do that has about $150,000 in liquid cash now? Do you recommend that they utilize the stock market, money market, bonds, or just leave it as liquid in the event like the upcoming elections cause a major uproar in the money distribution?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a lot of moving parts to a question like that because you always need to ask more questions to get the answer right. But I have the questions to ask to get the answer right. So a good law school answer, one of the first things that we learned in law school was to answer almost every question with the same answer, which is it depends. It depends. It really does depend on other information because your circumstances are not exactly like the circumstances of your neighbor or your brother-in-law or your parents or the guy at the water cooler, right? Everybody has a different time horizon. Everybody has a different marital way of doing things about money. You have all those agreements around money. Everybody has a different risk tolerance. There's so many things that factor into how your money should be invested. The other thing you want to think about before we get into answering that question is where you're getting your advice. So if you get your advice from someone who works as a mortgage broker or a banker or they're in real estate, guess what they're going to say? Real estate, right? Or a commercial broker. It's going to be someone that has an interest in you choosing their genre for your investment. If you talk to a stockbroker, guess what they're going to say? Buy stock. Don't mess around with mutual funds. Don't mess around with money market. Why would you want to do that? There's no commission in that, right? So you always want to consider their genre for your investment. Gathering information. That's the first thing. So then to answer the question, it's going to be the same analysis for everyone who has a question about their dollar. Where do I put my dollars? The question, right? And in this case, it's $150 questions. What do I do with my $150,000? So the way that you're going to get the exact right answer at your house is to go through a series of questions and analytics for you. So the first question is, what's the money for? Is this money that we want to tuck away for a rainy day in case we never need it? We're going to know it's there. Is it money we want to leave as legacy to our children or the causes we care about in the event of our passing? Is it money that we want to use in later years? You could call it retirement years. A lot of people use that word, although I prefer other words. But those freedom years where your money's earning the money now, you don't have to go earn it anymore, right? So is it for that or is it for a special goal? Maybe there's a combination of goals. It's for future vehicles that you might want to replace in the coming years or forever. It might be to help your kids with college or weddings or to launch their lives, to help them get a down payment together for their first condo or their first home. So the first question that you want to answer is, what's the money for? And we have actually in the Money, Truth, and Life, I've got a copy here, there is exactly how to go through this process to get the answer for you that's going to be the correct answer. It's called laddering. And laddering is a concept that we usually use as a term of art in the financial industry for the timing of things. It has to do with the maturity of things. So, for example, if you had a CD, a certificate of deposit at the bank, if you had one for 6 months or if you had one for 2 years, the 6-month one is going to have less risk because the money that you're earning is tied to that 6-month return. At 2 years, you're locking it in for more, so it's more risk because if the rates get better, you can't take advantage of them. You have less liquidity. So it has to do with timing. So it would make sense if you had $100 to have 10 6-month CDs rather than all $100 in one CD that's all tied up to the same date, the same maturity date. So see how the timing could benefit you? So we use that concept of laddering for you to come up with the answer of when do I need the money? Once you determine what it's for, is it for retirement or for a goal in a couple of years or for college in 10 years? Once you determine that, then you can determine how long do I need it for and does it need to be liquid or not? So if you're going to buy a car in a couple of years, or you've got kids ready to go to school, or you've got that anniversary trip, coming up in a couple of years, you're going to want it to be closer to you, liquid, right? Available. You don't want to tie it up in real estate or tie it up in stocks or mutual funds. You want to have it close to you. So if it's close to you and liquid, that's going to be the choices that you use for the short-term investments. If it's longer term, like the forever money or the never money or the retirement, 10 years or 20 years from now, we're going to do something special. Or if we need it, we'll supplement our income. Then it can be in some kind of an investment that is less liquid. It could be a little bit more safe, a little more backed up, maybe with real estate or some kind of an investment contract that gives you guarantees. It won't be quite as liquid, because now we know when we need it. We don't have liquidity as an issue, but it's going to be available when we do need it, fully liquid. And in the meantime, we have some safety nets attached to it, which brings me to another consideration of risk tolerance. Are you pretty, as a couple, if you're married, are you pretty aggressive? Like, whatever the market does is fine. I've got time and I have other resources. Or are you pretty conservative? Like, I worked really hard for that dollar. I don't want to risk it at all. It's too hard to go get another one. And I don't want to have to go work somewhere to, just cover my insurance premium in my later years. So all of those factor into a very simple template. It's actually in Money, Truth, and Life, laddering on page 103. And it's an easy way to go through what's the money for, when do I need it, what are the best options for liquidity versus safety. And then when you go through that and you decide how much of the $150 are allocated for each goal and for each need or each desire, then you'll have the answer that's correct for you at your house. So if you have an advisor you're working with, if you have a financial planner or a fiduciary that you work with, you can use this system with them if they don't have something very similar, and usually they don't for some reason. But ask them to go through with you these questions. If you don't have an advisor or someone that has a background in finance that you're working with, you can do it. It's very simple, but you don't want to miss a step. You want to ask every question in order and put the numbers down. Once you're looking at the laddering template, you can try it on and say, if I put that much away for future cars, that much away for something I want to do with my family, what's left? What's my legacy or my long-term money? You're going to have the answer right. You try it on. If it's like, no, I want to fine tune it. It's easy to do with the visual template for laddering. So with all that said, the answer to the question, what do I do with my $150,000? By answering those questions, you'll get the answer for you. But one thing I want to say, usually when people ask someone like me a question like that, they have liquid money and they're trying to decide if they want to put it in the stock market, buy all bonds, leave it in cash, weathering out a storm that they're perceiving might be coming, or should it be in mutual funds or diversified? Well, I always err, as a conservative investor for people, I always err on the side of caution. You always want to take less risk rather than more risk, even if you're not very risk adverse. So one of the easiest ways to mitigate or eliminate risk is through diversification. So I think it's great to own stock. If you only have $150,000, I mean, that's a wonderful accumulation, but it's not like 10 million, right? With $150,000, if you're going to buy individual stocks, you're not going to be able to buy enough stock holdings or stock shares of each genre to properly diversify. And so in that instance, if you're going to be in securities or in the market, I would recommend mutual funds to help diversify, not even across just sectors, but across many stocks in each sector, because they each have they're different companies. They have different pros and cons to each one. And when you're choosing a stock, if you decide to build your own portfolio, I've got right here in chapter 6, questions that you need to ask. So people will come in sometimes and say, oh, I love this stock. They have this really great new cell phone, or this new stick that goes in a cell phone. I love this stock because, they're doing flights to Africa now. I love this stock because whatever. I heard this really great media report at something that was on the news somewhere, and it just sounds good. I want to buy it. Well, that's not enough reasons to own a company, because when you own a share of stock, you own the whole company. It's just a small portion of it. So you better have 10 fingers up and at least 10 reasons to buy or sell a stock at any time. And here are some of the questions that you want to know that could answer whether it's a good reason to own a stock or sell it. How's the company doing? You want to know the financials. How's the sector doing? So there are different sectors in stock. There's transportation, there's pharmaceuticals, there's financials, commodities. There's all these different areas of businesses, and they're kind of divided up like that. Well, how's the sector doing? How's real estate doing? How's pharma doing? What should I really be owning? What kinds of stock, what kinds of companies should I be interested in looking at right now? Who are the management advisors? What's their plan for future operations? If they're running the company that's going to impact whether you make a profit or not, what the value of your shares are going to be, don't you want to know if they have a plan, and if they do, what the plan is? What's the projection in their market, products and services? How is it going to go? We've seen companies come and go because they weren't prepared to innovate, to be competitive. When the world changed, they didn't change, and they're no longer in business. So how are they positioned to pivot, especially, like this year, we're talking a lot about pivoting and plan B. How profitable is the company, and what is their track record with that? And what's the current debt structure? Maybe they've got a great idea. They have a lot of value. They own a lot of property. They've got warehouses full of their gadgets and their widgets. But what is their debt structure? Did they have to borrow their way to be in that position? You want to know that. So those are some things and more that you want to ask about a company if you're going to buy a stock or within a sector of stock. With $150,000, short answer, if it is pretty much liquidity that you're looking for, I would put at least most of that into a series of mutual funds with very low loads, very low fees. And you can spend a lot of money on management for mutual funds. You should always look for something under 2% a year for management. And there are many that are well under 1%. So that's my short answer. But it really comes down to you going through the questions, getting those questions answered, getting it on paper, fine-tuning it, and tweaking it using the laddering system on page 103.
Excellent. No, that is really, really great. Also, as you're talking about this too, there's been a lot of companies I know that they're like startups. They come up with these fantastic ideas. They'll pitch you the idea, and it's like, whoa, this is going to be like revolutionary. I'll share a little side story. When Bluetooth, the technology of Bluetooth was going to come out, I've heard people talking about this 5 years before it came out. And the more I read about it, the more intrigued I was. But back then, I didn't really have any knowledge like, how do you invest into this? Because I'm thinking, man, if I did invested in this technology back then, it'd be a whole different ballgame, right? Like we did with Apple, right? Same thing. If you had invested in Apple when they first came out, just because nobody thought they were going to make it, you'd be sitting really pretty right now as well too, But it's where I'm leading with this question is what are some things that maybe we should look out for companies, for example, that are offering you stocks that they're starting out, right? You talked about the debt, you talk about the reputation, but if it's a brand new company, you don't really have a whole lot of background for them. what are some key things that you need to be aware of and be careful with?
Yeah, that's a great question, because startups are kind of sexy. And when they're out there with the IPO and they're brand new, they really, they've got to get the capital in to be able to build their company. They're very risky. Very few startups make it. But every company that is now successful was once a startup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know how to pick them? I would use the same questions, because usually startups aren't somebody who's just mixing up something in their bathtub, right? They usually, the successful ones usually bring in a team of experts. They have R&D, they have people that know the product, they have people that know the sector, they know the competition, they know how to run the money, they know how much to leverage to capitalize the business. Most smart startups start with a really smart team of people who've done it before. I would look for that if you're really interested in a startup. And I would never put a portfolio, again, it depends, but I would never put more than 5 or 10% of a portfolio in startup companies. They're too risky. Now, you might get 1 out of 20 that is the one. It's the Amazon, it's the Starbucks.
Right.
But you don't know that. To take that kind of a risk, I think, is great if you have enough money outside of that startup investment to take care of all of your goals, take care of your family, and it's not money that you're going to need for something in the future to, sustain you, then that's fine. But anything that you can't afford to risk, I would definitely take a more conservative approach and diversify it and stick with the blue chip companies that have been around a long time. We know what they're going to earn next year. They've done it the last 50 years, and be very stable. But again, I'm coming from a moderately conservative standpoint.
Right.
It always works. It'll weather the storm. So that's how I would answer that question. Kind of the same way. Look behind the curtain. It's not just that they have this wonderful, life-changing technology that is so promising, because look who's telling you, right? Consider the source.
Right.
So that's how I would analyze that. And just be careful. Just be, it's a risk, just like many other risks. So you just want to manage that as you're moving forward.
Excellent. I appreciate you sharing that too. I know we got sidetracked a little bit, but I thought it'd be a great follow-up for that. Folks, thank you for joining us this morning. If you are just joining us now, we're here with Judy Copenbarger of Money Truth Moments. Today we're answering questions that you guys have submitted. If you're not following Judy, please make sure you do. She is at judycopenbarger.com. There's a wealth of information on her website. There's a lot of things for videos, topics, and different things that you can also have access to that are free. So you can't beat that too. And the fact that you get Judy here live every Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock, it's also a huge bonus for us, because we get to ask her those questions that normally, we're either too afraid to ask for sounding kind of dumb, or, we're just too embarrassed to ask, those specific questions because we don't have nobody to turn to. So thank you for joining us. Make sure that you guys share this feed. Make sure that folks are aware that there are resources such as Judy and her Money Truth Moments too. And don't forget also that her book, Money, Truth, and Life, is also a great resource. And actually, let's talk about Money, Truth, and Life just for a second. Can you talk a little bit about the book and the purpose of the book for folks?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I've been serving clients on a very comprehensive or collaborative basis for almost 40 years. Don't tell anybody. It's a long time. So there aren't very many surprises anymore. But what we do for clients is make sure that they have their entire house in perfect order, and they keep it that way forever. We make sure that their values and their goals are aligned. So as they achieve their most important goals, they're actually living their ideal life. So that's what's behind the practice that we've had for many years. What Money, Truth, and Life, the book, and the online mastery program do is they allow people to figure out these concepts at home. So they don't have to hire a planner or a strategic planner or do all that if they don't want to. But for some people, they probably should, just for the taxation. But it helps them learn the basics of finance. There's the legal aspects. So should I have a will or a trust? What other documents might I need to look after my family? Now that I've accumulated something, what do I need to do to make sure that I keep it, and protect it from probate fees and from taxes and all those things. We cover taxation, what you need to know about every kind of tax that impact most people. We talk about investments, things like laddering. What should I do with my dollar? We talk about the difference between a stock and a bond. We talk about the difference between a mutual fund and a money market, and what banking is all about, and when it's appropriate to use a bank or credit union or not. We talk about cash flows and cash reserves. So most people, well, I wouldn't say most, there's a portion of people out there that don't have a regular paycheck. They don't every 2 weeks get paid because it's Friday, or it's the 15th or something.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people that have their own business, or they work on commissions, or they have bonuses where their income is not equal. It's not always the same. So they'll get a pop of income, a couple thousand or maybe several thousand, and then there's nothing for a while. And then they get another pop. They sell a house, and then they get a big commission, right? So there's a lot of people that live like that. So just managing the cash flows and knowing how to handle their spending plan and deal with all of that is huge. So we cover all of that, but basically it's the 5 pillars: tax, legal, cash flows and reserves, insurances. There's all kinds of insurances that you could spend way too much money for. And all of those areas are covered that way. So I also put in the book and in the online mastery program a lot of real life stories from clients and our experiences that help people understand how someone made a really good decision and this is how it benefited them and their family, or someone who didn't make a good decision and here's how it impacted them and how it might have set them back. So that's what the online program does for people that want to do a deep dive, actually do the work and end up with their own strategic plan. And then the book does the same thing. It just opens your eyes to all the gaps, all the ways that you could make a money mistake so you can avoid, so you can get the money thing right and achieve marital and family harmony in the process.
Amen to that, for sure. That's awesome. You heard it, folks. Money, Truth, Life. It is available on Amazon. There's an electronic version of it, and there's also the book itself too. So make sure that you check it out as well. However you like to read books. So I know that it's about 8:22, so we're going to be a little bit short on time. But I want to ask you this question because this has come up a few times. Because we spoke about teenagers, we spoke about kids, and this is a two-part question. That is, when should I start planning for college for my kids? And then what should we be aware of when it comes to student loans?
Mm. Well, I think it's tough because everybody's at a different stage of life. Maybe you're the student, maybe you're planning a family or you
Mhm.
have a family. Maybe your kids are already in high school and you're filling out FAFSA forms going, shoot, right? So
Mhm. Yeah.
early and often is how you save for college. There are some wonderful programs. A couple of decades ago, IRS actually gave us some benefits where now you can grow either tax deferred or even better tax free the dollars that will be used to pay for post-secondary education. And they've even a couple of years ago extended that. So now you can pay for private high school too, if you have tuition for high school. So they're wonderful programs. A 529 is the tax code, is just the number of the tax code, but it's a program that allows you to save tax-free or invest tax-free for educational purposes for children or grandchildren or yourself if you want to go to school down the road. But they are wonderful programs. It's one of the few IRS gimmies that are left. It's one of the last things left that you can do, not have to pay tax, as a great incentive to help you plan and accumulate your money more, to be able to do that. So it's one of those values that I think the IRS got right. So that's early and often is the way to do that. I think making it as painless as possible will help. If you have an automatic ACH or an automatic contribution set up where every month, a couple of days after you get paid, the money goes right into that investment, the 529 investment for the education, it'll be painless. It'll be almost like it just came out of your check, like payroll taxes. It's like, I hate to do it, but once it's gone, it's like, it's not part of your spending plan now. It makes it automated. So that would be the best way to save. And then you just need to
Okay.
sit down and decide, how much do I need and in how many years? And we've got some pretty complicated analytics because the money's growing. So you don't need to divide it. If it's 8 years till college, you don't need to divide the tuition by 8 because you're paying it over a few years and your money's earning in the meantime. So it might even be less than you think that you need to save. So we can help with analytics if anybody out there wants to, call us or ask us, or we could point you to the right calculators to help you get that right. It's pretty simple when you know the buttons to push.
Gotcha.
So the second question was about, what was the second question?
How to be aware, what should we be aware of for student loans?
Oh boy. Well, the biggest distinction in student loans is they're either private where the parents take it on, or the children take it on, usually they're going to want both. If they can guarantee both, a bank will do that. But a student can have their own loan, or the parents can have it on behalf of their child and be on the hook for that repayment. But there are subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford loans out there. And what's nice about those is if you get the right kind, you can pay less interest, or the interest will be deferred the whole time you're in school until the repayment starts up. So the subsidized ones really give you, the government covers that interest, to the bank while you're a student. And then when you finish, then they start adding the interest then. So that makes a big difference at the other end. When you've got all those years, you don't have to pay the interest. So you want to know the distinction between subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford loans. It's always best to go for free money, though. That's not a loan. You don't have to pay it back. You don't have to figure out, how much of my future income will I spend trying to dig out. There's so many grants and so many scholarships and so much free money available at almost every institution and privately. If you look for what you're interested in, let's say you raise bees, there are scholarships for people that raise bees, that are interested in bees. If you're obviously, people know about the ones for scouts and the ones for community service and humanitarian efforts. They all have their own, the Lions group and the Mason group and all the different clubs out there always have money, scholarship money. But there are local ones and one-offs out there that every year go unclaimed. Nobody ever applies for them. And all you have to do is want to get a degree in whatever, electronics, or a degree in fixing cars, or psychology, or law. There are so many unclaimed scholarships that nobody ever even knows about. So I would work closely with the college that you're going to be attending, or your child's going to be attending. Talk to, befriend, take cookies to, whatever you have to do to the people in the financial aid office, because they see these come in. They've got postings and they have websites and they have usually lists of hundreds, if not thousands, of scholarships that are available. And then you get a good coach, or maybe you're going to be the coach for your child, to build some really good essays, some really good application answers, and get that whole portfolio together. So when it's time to fill out and you're, the little things blinking and the timer's going on the app, you can pull from your little book, that's an essay that I could plug in here and just fine tune it for that school or for that opportunity. That's an essay that I could put here. So doing all that work ahead, you can do when your child is 14, 15, 16, well before they're ready to apply for college, and just be ready. Just have all that prep work done so it's not overwhelming and it's like, I can't do another one. But when you get down, I like the numbers, right? I'm a numbers girl. When you get down to it and you think, here's a scholarship, it's only $5,000. It's not a big deal in the scheme of things. But if you figure you write a $1,000 essay and then you get $5,000, that's a lot of money per word. That's a lot of money per hour or minutes, and you've already done the work for that. And they add up. You have 5 here, 10 there, there's 25 over here, all these little $2,000 and $3,000 ones, they really add up. And then finally, almost every institution, almost every educational institution has money that is granted to students that come in if you just ask. We don't have the super high income. We really did work hard. Is there a grant from the dean? Is there a grant from the faculty that will help us get in and get the free money to just help us cover tuition or even housing? So you just have to ask, I guess, is the big bottom line. There's so much available. Is just start early, be prepared, have a plan of action, and then execute the plan.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And you know what? I know we're almost out of time, but it can't be a show without having our weekly. So what have you got for us this week?
Okay. Well, I had a challenge in mind, but I'm thinking this laddering came up, and maybe we ought to create, off the top of my head, a laddering challenge. So Perfect. Here you're going to get your pen and your paper. I am a big believer in your mind to your hand to the page. There's something magical about creating that way. Can't be just clicking, on your your little cell phone. But yeah, grab some pen and paper, and I'm gonna write this too. So we're gonna do a laddering challenge. So the first question is for any money that you have lying around that you want to invest, or money that you see I should be putting in every time I get paid. I should pay myself 2%, 5%, 10% is the goal, right? If you can get to that. So the first thing is going to be in laddering, this extra money that I'm putting in monthly, or this extra money that I have sitting in the bank, it's more than I need in cash reserves. What is it for? So the first question is, what's it for? So a little bit of goal setting, and maybe next week we can bring back the proper goal setting challenge, because there are definitely elements to a goal that makes it more than a wish or a dream, right? So what's it for? Maybe put 3 or 4 things that you would have as goals around that money, around that contribution, or that money that's sitting there. And then, when do I need it? So, and there might be 2 or 3 categories. Maybe part of what you're accumulating is going to be for the future, retirement down the road, or whatever you're going to call it, freedom time. Maybe it's for those special times between now and then, or some big event that you want to fund. And then the third thing is liquidity more important, or safety? So this is going to help you begin to answer, as a couple, if you're married, right? How safe do I need it to be? Do I need to make sure there's very little risk? And I don't mean put it in the bank and not invest it. There are many investments that are very safe, right? That really have reduced risk. Do I need it to be very, very safe, or do I really need it to be close to me in a bank in cash? So first question, what's it for? Second question, when do I need it? And the third question, do I need it to be liquid or safe, or there might be both? And this is the beginning of fleshing out that laddering conversation that'll help you answer, what do I do with my money? All right, so there's your challenge for the week. I can't wait to hear the results.
Awesome. And once again, thank you so much for your time, Judy. Folks, if you're just joining us, please make sure you watch the replay. There was a lot of great questions answered today. There's a lot of resources that Judy shared with us as well. Follow her at judycopenbarger.com, and join us here every Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock, for Money Truth Moments with Judy Copenbarger. Thanks so much, and you have yourself an awesome day.